A wounded leopard, barely holding onto its paws, unexpectedly came right out to a herd of zebras and lay down next to one of them. But instead of panic, something strange happened. One of the zebras did something that took the whole story in a completely unexpected direction. In a dry valley at the foot of black rocks, where the wind endlessly chased hot dust and the rare trees looked like ghosts, there was a simple and cruel order: the strongest survives. No one here doubted this rule, because any weakness quickly turned into death. But one day, a reserve employee named Danyar witnessed an event that did not fit into any laws of nature. It happened early in the morning, when the sun was just beginning to light the plain with soft light and the air had not yet warmed up after the night. At that moment, he noticed movement near a dry riverbed, and at first it was just a blurry silhouette. However, it soon became clear that it was a leopard known among observers as Nazir, a fast and dangerous predator usually avoided even by large animals. But now his behavior was completely different. He moved slowly and heavily, often stumbling, and one of his hind legs could hardly support him. His side was torn, his fur matted with blood, and his breathing showed that every effort was a struggle. He no longer looked like a hunter, but rather like one fleeing from inevitable death. Behind him, a group of jackals was already trailing, their voices echoing across the plain with an unpleasant sound. They were in no hurry because they were confident in the outcome, and this gave their movements a cold-blooded assurance. The leopard stopped for a moment, swayed, and raised his head as if looking for an exit. A herd of zebras was moving ahead, walking calmly, unaware of what was happening. And then something strange occurred. Instead of hiding, he headed straight for them. He did not try to camouflage himself or prepare for an attack. His steps were open and direct, as if he were counting on help. Danyar, watching this, felt a strong inner tension. The leader of the herd, a large stallion named Thunder, was the first to notice him. He stopped abruptly and looked ahead intently, his body tensing and his ears turning alertly. The other zebras also slowed down, and anticipation of danger hung in the air. It seemed that in another moment, the herd would scatter or attack. But the leopard took a few more steps and suddenly collapsed right in front of the leader. He didn't make a sound, didn't try to resist, but simply lowered his head and closed his eyes. At that moment, everything around seemed to freeze, and Danyar caught himself not breathing. Thunder cautiously approached and stretched out his neck, his movements tense but without aggression. He touched the leopard's face, as if checking if he was alive. After that, the herd began to move, but not in a panic. On the contrary, smoothly and calmly. The zebras began to surround the wounded predator, gradually forming a dense ring. Their bodies closed in, and soon the leopard was completely hidden inside this living barrier. At this time, the jackals emerged from the grass and approached, expecting easy prey. But seeing a united herd in front of them, they stopped abruptly. Their behavior changed, and instead of confidence, wariness appeared. They began to circle the ring, trying to find a weak spot, but found none. One of them tried to break through, but the leader stepped forward sharply and struck the ground with his hoof. This was enough to stop the attack. Other jackals also tried to approach from different sides, but the zebras only squeezed the ring tighter. The standoff dragged on. The sun rose higher, and the heat intensified. The predators growled and were nervous, but they did not dare to take a decisive step. Inside the circle, the leopard showed few signs of life. Sometimes his body shuddered, and then the young zebras would cautiously touch him as if checking his condition. One old female even brought some damp earth and left it near his muzzle, and he was able to lick the moisture without almost opening his eyes. This looked so unusual that Danyar could not look away. Over time, the jackals began to retreat, first slowly, then faster. Soon they disappeared, realizing that the prey was inaccessible to them. But the herd did not disperse immediately. The zebras stood in place for a long time, as if waiting for the danger to return. Only after some time did they loosen the circle, but they did not go far. Days passed one after another, and all this time they stayed near the leopard. The leader sometimes approached him, and at night, when it got cold, the zebras gathered around him again, protecting him from the wind. Danyar realized that he was witnessing something rare and difficult to explain. Several days passed before the leopard was able to stand up. He did it slowly, with noticeable effort, and stood for a long time trying to keep his balance. The zebras remained nearby during this time, not moving. The leader came closer, and the leopard looked at him. Their eyes met, and there was no enmity in them, only calmness and a quiet connection. Then the leopard took a step, then another, stopped, and looked back. It seemed he didn't want to leave right away. One of the zebras snorted softly, and he slightly tilted his head as if he understood the gesture. After that, he turned and slowly headed toward the hills. His silhouette gradually dissolved in the evening light. However, it didn't end there. A few days later, Danyar saw him again at the edge of the plain. The leopard stood in the distance and watched the herd without approaching. After some time, the leader answered him with a quiet sound, and there was no threat in it. The leopard stood a little longer and disappeared. Since then, he appeared again and again, sometimes at dawn, sometimes at dusk. Each time he stopped at a distance and watched, and each time the herd answered him. A strange bond arose between them that cannot be explained by ordinary logic. Danyar understood that he had witnessed a rare phenomenon. In a world where strength decides everything, sometimes things happen that break the usual rules. And it is these moments that stay in the memory longest, reminding us that even in harsh conditions, compassion is possible. Dear viewers, what do you think of this story? Please tell us in the comments. And if you like this video, like it and subscribe to our channel. Goodbye.